In Psalm 40, we see another time in David's life. We talked about this last week. He said, I waited patiently for the Lord, and he inclined unto me and heard my cry. And we, all far as we got last week, so I waited patiently for the Lord. The whole thought in verse number 12, it sort of sets the setting of the psalmist David. For innumerable evils have compassed me about. Mine iniquities have taken hold upon me, so that I'm not able to look up. They're more than hairs of mine head, therefore my heart faileth me. David said, I've got enemies everywhere. I've got enemies that I brought up on myself, and I got enemies out there that are attacking me because I'm trying to serve God. I know what it is to have enemies everywhere I go. That's what David's saying. I've got enemies even within myself. The devil comes along and reminds me the things I should have done for God that I didn't do for God. The things I should have done for God that I didn't do. Things that I shouldn't have done that I did. Isn't that what Paul said in Romans chapter 7? That which I would not, I do. Yeah, Paul understood that. Paul understood what it was to be mortal like you and I. There's never going to be a time in our life that we're going to look at God and say, today, God, I did everything just the way you wanted it. Because we're still round in a sinful body, prone to sin. And if we ever thought we could live a day like that, then we look at God and say that pride takes over. So we'll never have a day where we can sit back and think, I don't have to go back over today to see how many times I failed God. No, we do. Why? Because we fail God. But aren't you glad that even in our failures and our faults, our problems and our struggles, those that come from without and those that come from within, aren't you glad that he can still say, I waited patiently for the Lord? I waited patiently. And notice the Bible said, and he inclined unto me and heard my cry. People, our God in heaven, what makes him so good is he's listening for our call. He's listening for our cry. Just like that mother that brings home that baby and puts that baby in that crib. That baby can roll over and mama hears it. While her ears are tuned to that baby. She doesn't miss nothing from that baby. And I'm going to tell you about dads. After about the third night, dads can sleep through it. I'm not lying to you. Sleep through it. Our ears are not as attuned as that mother's ear is. Marla's ear was attuned. I mean, buddy, she could hear a flea jump from the top railing to the blanket. If that baby was in that crib, she could hear it. Now, buddy, if that baby wasn't in that crib, T-Rex could come in that room. Why? Because the kids ain't in that room. She ain't listening to that room. She's listening where they are. Her ears were attuned to them. And we learned one thing real quick that y'all all know. If a child gets quiet, it ain't good. It's not good. And you could hear, I'd be out doing something, all of a sudden she'd come in, where are the children? Why? I ain't heard nothing out of them. And then all of a sudden there's this horror that grips your soul because you know it's bad. And you start running the house looking everywhere for them because you know whatever they're into is not good for mankind. But God's ears are tuned to us. His ears are open unto God that hears prayer. Not only does God hear prayer, but aren't you glad God answers prayer? He don't just hear it. He does something about it. Now, I'm not saying that God's going to answer yes every time. And even some of his yeses may take a while to happen. You may pray for something in your life and God may answer it today. And you may not get for a couple of weeks, 3-4 weeks from now. Don't you remember in Daniel chapter 9 when Daniel was praying and he prayed for 21 days, fasting, eating nothing but bread and water, fasting and praying unto God? And the angel showed up. I personally believe it's Jesus Christ. in angelic form, showed up and spoke to Daniel and said, God sent you an answer the day you prayed 21 days ago. We don't get God's answer the moment God hears nor grants. Sometimes it takes God's, because He's teaching us patience, He's teaching us faith, He's teaching us trust. What did Job say? Though He slay me, yet will I trust Him. Can you imagine going through what all Job went through? But Job stayed faithful with the stuff. He knew God inclined His ear unto him. Now notice in verse 2, I want to get into the sad situation in verse number 2. The sad situation. He brought me up also out of an horrible pit. Now if you look at the pit, and just thinking of the pit before we break the rest of it down, this pit that he's speaking about, it shows, if you will, and reveals the darkness of the pit. Sin has claimed victory, if you will, on David. And David is now in the place where the sun may be shining on everybody else around him. But buddy, the sun just isn't shining on David. He's in this pit of darkness. And I'm always thinking, from different background. And y'all ever seen the old Tarzan movies? Y'all remember the old lion and old tiger pits that they dug? And they dug those great big circles, and they would put those limbs and leaves across the top to where it would look like the ground was still flush, and when you were running, you would fall into it. And then you'd watch the lions and the tigers leap and jump and try to get out, and they could never get to the top. People, that's sort of like the pit that you're in. And that pit that David's talking about there, the sun isn't shining. You don't see the brightness of the sun because it's the place of the pit. Why, if you dug that pit out in the sun, you would see it and you wouldn't fall into it. So the devil knows how and where to use pits and snares. Now, I know a little bit about snaring. There's not much I can't put in a snare. And the greatest thing about a snare, you need to understand, you can trap all day long. Trapping's not snaring. They're two totally different. Trap's all about getting an animal to go where you want him to go. Snare is all about letting the animal go where the animal wants to go. But you're going to find the tightest place that there is, and that's where you put that loop that animal sticks his head through. And you normally put it in places where there are briars and thistles. Why? Because they're always rubbing up against their ear and up against their nose. That doesn't bother them because it's a briar. They're used to it. If you hang that snare out in the middle of an open field, you watch those animals just walk around it. But if you put it back in the shadow, back where the briars are, that animal will walk straight through it because that's what that animal's programmed to do. The devil knows where to put his devices at. He doesn't put them out in the sun because if it's out in the sun, you can see it. If it's out in the sun, you can be aware that, guess what? Something's wrong with this ground right here. It's not what it should be. But what he does is he takes it and he puts it in a place. Our vision's not that well. And since the sun isn't shining and we're not seeing it, and I hate to say this, but most times what gets us in trouble, we're strolling, sort of moping along, and that's when the devil really eats our lunch. We start thinking of all the things that we've done that created the problems in our life. Can I tell you one thing right now? There is nobody in this building that has not created problems in their life among themselves, for themselves. Nobody in this building. Do you know how I know that? Because there ain't a perfect one out there. I can be here another 100 years, and guess what? There still ain't going to be a perfect one out there. Because we all fight the same struggles. And the devil gets us because we start looking down at our feet and we're not looking out in front of us. Have you ever not been paying attention and missed a step up? That doesn't bother me. You know the one that kills me? Is when I miss the step down. Oh, trust me. If I miss a step up, even if I fall, it's okay. We got it. If I take a step down and miss it, and my back does this number, you can ask my wife. I look like, turn away, Miss Linda, turn away. I look like Tim Conway. I'll be there in a minute. Marla looks at me, she goes, is there something wrong with you? Never felt better in my life. Why are you walking so fast? She said, you're always pulling me along. Not today. But the devil knows exactly where to put those pitfalls and snares. And we fall in the pit because we're not looking in front of us. We're looking at our feet. Nowadays, it's different. Nowadays, we're looking at our cell phone. We can't walk and chew bubble gum, but we think we can type and walk. I didn't see that stupid thing. Brush this high. Didn't see it. You know, some cities are making it illegal to text and walk or look at your phone and walk. They've had so many people walk out in front of cars. Oh, fountains, I don't care. Fountains, you just destroy your phone, make a fool out of yourself. They do. They walk in fountains all the time. I'm sitting there thinking, come on. First off, you don't have that many friends. I know you. You don't have that many friends. Second off, they're not that important. How do I know that? Run out of money and call them and say, I need help, and see if they come. If they come, put them down as a friend. If they don't come, I'm unfriending you and unfriending you and unfriending you. Joseph, how does it go? Dishonor on you. Dishonor on your girl. Dishonor on your family. Dishonor on everybody. That's how we fall in this pit. And once we get in this pit, buddy, it's hard to get out. Because the devil keeps, I don't know, he just seems like he keeps moving the side around on us. Now, you know what he does? We keep trying to get out of the pit rather than coming to God. And that's the reason why spiritual friends, we told you this morning, is so important. To have somebody when you go in the pit that's going to pray for you. Why? Because when you're in the pit, you need help, you need prayer, you need friends. It's a shame that we live in a society today where Christian people shoot their own. I'm not trying to be ugly, I'm just being honest. They'll shoot their own people. And I'm not trying to say let things go. I'm not saying that. But you know what? If it ain't worth fighting over, think about it. Is it worth fighting over? Would you come, you know, our pastor in Panama used to tell us, he said, I'm going to tell you young people something right now. He said, especially when y'all go to a church in the States, y'all need to learn something right now. There is a difference between preference and conviction. He said, let me tell you the difference. Preference is something I prefer one way. I'm not going to do what you're doing, but if you want to do it, there ain't nothing really wrong with it. And his example was always a pink shirt. He said, if a man wants to wear a pink, I got pink shirts. I don't care. I wear them. They don't bother me. My wife says, you look good in pink. I said, yes, ma'am. I'm done. You know, Brother Lark looked at me one day and he said, I can't believe you can get up there and preach in a pink shirt. I said, Brother Lark, I've yet to figure out who's the bigger man. The man that wears the pink or the man that runs his mouth and gets whooped. You had to figure out who. And the next week, Brother Lark comes in with a pink tie on. He did the same thing to Bubba one time, didn't he? Yeah. He said, and the second thing is conviction. Conviction is something you'll fight over. Conviction is something you'll go to blood and blows over. The virgin birth of Christ, I'll fight you over that. The inspired word of God, I'll fight you over that. But if we're going to worry about what color the songbook is, I don't care. And by the way, ain't nobody figured out what that thin songbook is yet. I hear it called blue and black all the time, and guess what? It's close enough. I ain't 100% sure which color it is. Don't care. Both them songbooks were free. Amen. I didn't care what color they were. Well, would you mind getting this color? Am I paying for them? No, we're paying for them. Get whatever color you want. I have no problem with that. Notice it's a pit, but notice it's a different type pit. He called it a horrible pit. It shows the distress of the situation. In truth, if God didn't intervene with you in the pit, you'd never get out of the pit. You can leap and jump and fall over just like the lions and the tigers in Africa and Asia and India and actually die in that pit. Or the natives come and they take the spears and the bows and kill you in the pit. The devil loves throwing spears and shooting arrows at God's young'uns in the pit. And I'm not saying he doesn't have a right to leave us there. But aren't you glad that God's gracious and he never does? Aren't you glad that God says, my ear's inclined to hear your cry? Notice not only it's called a horrible pit, but he names something else. Miry clay. Now, I'm going to tell you something about that. I'm going to give you Bourne's translation on this because I think I know a little bit better than what David probably did about writing this. And I'm not taking it away from David. They have a clay over there that they make their pottery out of. And that clay over there, when it's wet, can be massively sticky. And once you get in it, you're sliding and you're not really getting out of it. But son, down here we got what's called gumbo mud. And when you get in gumbo mud, I've been in a few situations. If people hadn't been there, I was in one in Kansas. If Marla's brother-in-law wouldn't have been there, I wouldn't be here right now. No. We were shooting frogs. And I stepped off on the side of that stream running by that soybean field. And I promise you right now, when he got to me, the water was here and I was steadily sinking. When I hit, I was here. And before him to get from probably where that sidewalk is out there, I was already to my bottom lip. It would have been another couple of minutes. I might not have been here. And I couldn't get out. He had to go out, grab me, and literally pull me out of that mud. I mean, and I thought to myself, boy, I thought beaver ponds down in Louisiana is bad, and they are. You get in a beaver pond in Louisiana. I know y'all seen this in y'all's lifetime. You have a boot on each leg going in. And you come out, you ain't got a boot on either leg. And there ain't no sense in going back in there and trying to get it. Because you ain't going to find it. We had a water leak underneath the house several years ago. Joseph and I, we're going to go to the house and fix it.
All I got to say is we were gypped on the snacks.
I'm telling you. Daniel goes, I'll take Nathan, tell me what you need, I'll make the Home Depot runs. Man, it was cold, And we go underneath there, and we've got gloves on. Now, out of 4 gloves going in, only 1 comes out.
Those 5 I had spared, I lost it.
Yes, I lost it. We never did find them gloves. I don't know where they are. That red clay underneath that house, I have no idea where they are. I will say that it was one blessing, though. The water was dripping, was on the hot side. So as long as you stayed in the mud, it was warm. When you got out of the house, it was like walking in a freezer, buddy.
Not as warm as those s'mores were we.
Yeah, they're out there roasting s'mores, and we're underneath there. Oh, it was muddy. Gumbo mud everywhere.
Fire done to get out fast.
Yeah. Said, Daniel, you gonna bring me a s'more? If you want one, get out and get it. I knew then I should have killed him, Carl. I hate to tell you this, I should have killed him then. Your life would be so much easier if I'd have killed him then. Of course, Marlon wants me to kill him about every other day, so I'd be pretty much, I don't have 2 children left. But a miry clay, miry, that which we think of gumbo mud. It's the world in which we live that kills spirituality. It kills spiritual momentum. You get up one day, boy, you think you're going to do something for God, get ready, the devil's coming. Why, if he can get you spitting and sputtering and spinning and turning and look like a duck walking on ice, he'll win before the day's over. That's what we got to understand, what the devil's up to. Notice the second thing that you see in verse number 2. We see the great salvation. In the depth of this pit, he's going to cry out. And notice what God's going to do. And set my feet upon a rock and establish my goings. God didn't leave him there. God didn't forsake him. God reached down where he was, and we see an elevation. God reached down and set him upon a rock. Aren't you glad God didn't leave you where he found you? How many of y'all was out doing things that you don't even want to admit you were doing at the time God found you? Aren't you glad you're not there? See, that's the difference in salvation. God saved you to change you, not to keep you the way you are. We have too many Christians today that want to, quote unquote, get saved, but still be the same person they were before they got saved. It doesn't work. I'm not saying you're not going to be hounded every day that you live by sin of some form or fashion. Sure you will. I believe Paul fought sin up to the time he left. Heard Brother Preacher Ray make a statement one time. He said, let me tell you young people something right now. He said, I'm an old man now. He said, and I'm tempted more now than I've ever been tempted in my life. I think it's a true statement. The further we go down the road, the more the devil's going to do to stop us. Why? Because we're a bigger threat the further down the road we are. We're supposed to know more about God, more about getting God to work in our life, more about encouraging people to get God to work in their life. So we become a bigger threat. I'm going to put it to you real simple. When I was in Kansas, I was stationed at Fort Leavenworth. My wife was doing time there, and I went with her, and that way Cody could be born at Fort Leavenworth, Kansas. It happened, people. It happened. Fort Leavenworth, Kansas was known at the time for, when you think of Leavenworth, Kansas, what do you think of? Prisons. That's not what Fort Leavenworth, Kansas is. Fort Leavenworth, Kansas is a weird, true fort that has about 10 to 15 times more officers than enlisted people. You won't find that but a couple of training places throughout the world. Fort Leavenworth, Kansas one. They had at that time the Command General Staff College. And those men are up there and they're taught combat. They're taught troop, logistics, movement. They're training to be promoted. Many of them are going to go into infantry positions. And that's what they're training. If we're moving troops, how are we going to move them? How are we going to flank? How are we going to send? And they play a lot of internet war games back and forth, trying to deploy troops. And it is a 5-day-a-week training facility on learning how to fight war. And the reason being is, if you shoot a private, big deal. He's a private. He wasn't leading nobody, wasn't nobody following him. You shoot a general that's got 100,000 people under him. You just impacted 100,000 people. You shoot a captain that's got 1,000 people under him. You just impacted 1,000 people. So the further you go for God, the more the devil can do to you, the bigger impact it's going to have with the ripples going down. Because if you go out and you stop a private, there's no impact at all. Good grief, you know what stops most privates? Fear. Second is alcohol. Bullet starts flying, a lot of privates will sit down on you. I promise you. Why? It's the first time in their life they've ever been in a position they've been shot at. Now those that can handle it, they go up through the ranks and they become guys like Mike Kalk. Mike Kalk, the last report I read of him before he retired, he was in 76 live fire situations. 76 times he'd been in a position under fire and returning fire. Bosnia, Croatia, throughout the Middle East, 76 combat situations. You know what Mike Kalk's favorite statement is? He said, you can believe whatever you want to. When a bullet starts flying, there's no atheist in a foxhole. You'll be praying to God. Aren't you glad God elevates us? He didn't leave us where we were. He picked you up. Not only that, notice as we go through this, He put our feet where? Upon a rock. Jesus Christ. We have establishment. I like that fact. I like the fact that the Bible said He established my goings. People, man, I'm telling you, I think God does something more than just say, no, I just don't want you to get saved. I'm going to change your life. Any man be in me, he's a new creation, new creature in Christ Jesus. We're not what we were yesterday. We're something new today. Notice in verse number 3, and He put a new song in my mouth. He changed our tune. You know, there are a lot of Christians today, namesake Christian today, that would do good if God would change their tune. I don't know whether they're saved or lost. I don't know. But I know some that need to talk to God for sure. And God needs to talk to them. Because He needs to put a new song in my mouth. Because people, it's our mouth that makes the difference. I'm going to run this one real quick because you know this as well as I do. Be careful with the faces that we make when we're going through situations, because they speak as loud as our words do a lot of times. Be careful with the manner of which we conduct ourselves, because we're all prone to stressing out in stressful times. Sure we are. And when we get stressful, we get short. Don't be short with those around you. You know why? Because those are the very ones that's going to be praying for you later. So keep them on your side. And if we are short, understand, get it corrected, and let's do something. Why? Because people, we're in a struggle. God's going to put a new song in our mouth. Change our heart's desire. Notice something else. Even praise unto our God. They're not going around griping and complaining. They're going around singing what all God has done for them. Notice, many shall see it in fear and shall trust in the Lord. Many shall see it. Don't you realize you're seen by people every week? Every week you're seen by people. They're looking at your life. And if we're not careful, we're sort of like this bum one time that walked back of the truck. The guy that told me this was true, and I know the guy, he's one of them, this would probably happen. He said, I'm getting ready to make deliveries, and he said, I'm driving one of these short trucks driving around town. He said, I get ready to unload this truck at this delivery place, and he said, I open up the bed of the truck, and I go on. About the time this bum comes on the back of the truck. He said, man, he said, do you know what time it is? He said, no, sir. He said, I don't have a watch on. He said, I got short sleeves on. You can see I don't have a watch on. He said, man, he said, I need a little help. He said, could you give me some money? He said, no, sir. He said, I don't have any money. He said, all I got's a sandwich in the front. He said, if you want to get out of the cab of the truck, you can have my lunch. He said, it's just a sandwich. He said, no, I'll wait for the rescue mission to open up. He said, you're working? He said, yeah. He said, I got to provide my family. He goes, I'm homeless. You ain't got no watch? You ain't got no watch. I ain't got no money? You ain't got no money. Now I'm eating a hot lunch. You're eating a cold sandwich. You ain't doing me no better. He said he went walking off back of that truck. Tell me he's wrong. The world sees that. But aren't we glad God is more than what the world sees? And let us show them what He is. Man, we need to be some encouragement. Notice a great celebration. We'll finish with this. Blessed is that man that maketh the Lord his trust. His soul is anchored on the solid rock, and ain't nothing going to change. Regardless what happens, he's walking with Jesus. So listen, people, I hate to tell you this, but when Trump was in the White House and gas was $1.79 a gallon, I still had problems paying some of my bills. It just means God has to make up more of my check than He did before. That's all it means. I'm not trying to say that to be callous. I'm being honest as I can. People, none of us in this building have deep enough pockets that problems does not set us back. None of us. If you do, there's other churches, you know. This is poor people church. Poor people. I didn't say poor. We po. We can't fold the second O. We can't fold the R. We po. We just purely old-fashioned po church. Brother Skinner used to say he went to a poor. He said, but I can't afford but one O in mine. I said, no, Brother Skinner, I can't even afford the second, the O nor the R. Notice what he said. And respecteth not the proud, nor such as turn aside to lies. Why should we respect the proud? They're not doing God's business anyway. They're not. We live in a world today that's filled with people that's proud and full of themselves. But that's not going to stand before God. Now I would be lying if I didn't say I like it when Elon Musk takes it to the liberals. I'd be lying if I said I didn't like that now. Linda, you didn't hear the latest one with AOC, did you? You know, her favorite thing is, if you say anything about her, oh, they're just mad because I won't date them. That's her favorite response, you know, if it's a conservative. She made a statement about Elon Musk being, what was the proper term? Yeah, but she used something else about him being confident, and they're not confident, but some phrase she used. And he sent her back. He said, don't be flirting with me, girl. I won't date you. Yeah, he got on, then got removed again.
Yeah, no, because they're going to make a pillow with a tweet on front of it to help the liberal go to sleep at night.
Yes, right. But it's just, I'd be lying if I said watching him just kill them. It's funny, people. It's hilarious. I enjoy it. It's wrong. I know it's wrong. I shouldn't enjoy it. I want to get popcorn and watch it. I really do. I mean, it's just funny. I mean, because they're dealing with somebody that they're not even in the same mental state. You know, Bernie Sanders came out because they spent 30 years of trying to get a spaceship out and back in one piece, and they couldn't do it, and they spent, and God only knows how much money they wasted. Elon Musk does it in 3 years out of his own pocket. And Bernie Sanders comes out and he says, nobody should have that much power. This needs to be taken because it belongs to America. Elon Musk just typed one statement. Bernie, I thought you were dead. Oh, I just fell out. He's hilarious. I will say one thing about him. He doesn't go gunning for them. But if they gun for him, He just wipes the floor. Man, it's hilarious because it's one sentence. He's not like Trump. Trump, when he goes on the attack, he's like a bulldog. Bite, 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 bite. Elon Musk just makes one sentence. And when you read it, it's like, I wish I was smart enough to say that. I mean, I'd be mad and foaming at the mouth, but he can do it just like, I won't date you. Click. Hilarious. But notice in verse 5, many, O Lord my God, are thy wonderful works which thou hast done, and thy thoughts which are to usward. Aren't you glad he thinks towards us? They cannot be reckoned up in order unto thee. If I would declare and speak of them, they are more than can be numbered. Praise God, all his works that are usward. I thank God for them. I thank God that when I get down on my knees, that I know God is still in heaven and he's still in charge. I know we're living in a world today that a lot of people don't think God is in charge. But I'm going to tell you right now, God is 100% in charge. And can I tell you something? He's going to be in charge tomorrow. I don't care what they do. They can shut down every mainstream outlet in America that would speak truth. They can shut down every online. They can shut down every news. They can take everything to themselves. Let me tell you something. God's still in charge.
And they're going to find out.
One of these days, they're going to find it all out. I was listening the other day. Donna Brazil. I'll tell you one on her real quick. They asked one of these guys the other day, he said, he's Canadian, I can't remember his name, but they asked him, he said, if you had a choice between going fishing with Donna Brazil and Hillary Clinton, who would you go with? He said, Donna Brazil. They said, why? They said, is there a reason? He said, oh, very simple. He said, if I go fishing with Donna Brazil, I'm going to go fishing. If you go fishing with Hillary Clinton, you may be sleeping with the fishes.
Oh, my Jesus.
I thought it was good. She was on the other night, said, y'all got to understand, the Republican Party's defeated. They've lost all momentum. We have a roaring economy. And 60% of the United States are behind us. I seen one poll on Joe Biden, his approval rating is 33%. And that's oversampling Democrats. His real approval rating is about 29%. There are more Republicans being registered in every state than has ever been registered in history. Nevada has more Republicans being registered in Nevada than has ever been registered. Florida. By the way, people, these are the states they have to win. You just stop and you think, people, they don't have it. But she will go online and all the analysts just, that's right, you tell them, we've got this. Best president ever. Compared to what? It's the only person I can think of being compared to. And when he's being that, you know who he's being? I'm telling you, people, it just absolutely blows my mind. They can tell a lie and they try to make it sound convincing. People, we win the war. I read the last chapter in the book. We win. When we get to heaven, guess what? They're going to find out we won. And if they don't get saved, they're going to find out they lost. So when trouble comes your way, remember how deep the pit is. Psalm 139 said, where can I go from God? The deepest place in the ocean, thou art there. Heights of heaven, thou art there. Don't matter where we are, God is there.